Welcome to a new realm of insights into the Korean Peninsula. At Korea Risk Group, we delve deep into the complexities of North and South Korea, offering bespoke analyses that empower decision makers. Whether you're in government, business, or academia, our tailored solutions provide clarity in an opaque region. Let our team guide your strategy with data-driven insights and on-the-ground intelligence. Step into a world of informed decision-making and visit KoreaRiskGroup.com today. Hello listeners and welcome to the NK News Podcast. I'm your host, Jacco Zwetsloot. This roundtable episode for the month of April was recorded on Tuesday, April 9th, and I'm joined in the studio by Ifang Bremer, Lina and Joon. Welcome on the show.
Hello, thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Ifang, you are, as well as being one of the fine journalists here, you're also the internship coordinator at NK News, and you've brought along two of the NK News interns. What's your role? What do you have to do as a coordinator of interns?
What do I do? Well, I coordinate them. No. They're already great journalists, and sometimes I give them some tips and tricks to make their life easier here at NK News, and they're obviously also here to help us journalists out.
Lina, what's the best tip Ifang's given you?
Ooh.
Putting you on the spot.
Well, honestly, Ifang has really, it's both great and bad in terms of that he really pushes me out there, and then so I can talk to a lot of people on the spot. Yeah, and so that really helped me in reporting.
Great. Joon, what's the best thing that Ifang's told you?
I write a lot of analyses, so Ifang kind of guides me through kind of when I have too many experts that I talk to and too many comments that I gather, then he kind of guides me through how I can navigate through that.
Terrific. Okay, well, let's get started. You've chosen some themes for today. The first one being South Korea's elections. It's the nationwide National Assembly election tomorrow, and we're looking at a couple of stories here to see how North Korea fits into that. So the first one you've highlighted, in South Korean election, North Korea and its nukes barely moved the needle. That's actually a Jongmin Kim story. We're going to talk about it because that's our theme. Why don't South Korean voters care about nuclear issues?
Well, what experts are saying is that the older generation, there's a divide between the older generation and the younger generation. So that the older generation has memories of the Korean War and the Cold War, but the millennials and the Gen Z youth do not have much memory or experience directly related to unification and division of the Korean Peninsula. So they see the status quo as the normal state and therefore do not have much attention or derive much attention to North Korean issues.
Now, are the political parties in South Korea trying to lead the public and say, well, no, hang on, this is important, or are they following the public and saying, you don't care, we don't care?
So for the ruling party, the People Power Party, along with the Yoon administration, they've kind of adopted the Yoon administration's North Korea policy. They've emphasized a stronger trilateral security cooperation with the United States and Japan. North Korea is briefly mentioned within the PPP's broader theme of making South Korea as a global pivotal state, but policy focuses mostly on socioeconomic issues. And for the DP, the main opposition party, the Democratic Party, their policies kind of recycle the Moon administration's North Korea policy. They have a focus on reinstating peace. They particularly focus on the geopolitical issues and are very much against the trilateral alliance, saying that a military alliance with Japan is a little worrisome. They propose a bipartisan North Korea policy for denuclearization and peace building, so therefore reviving past inter-Korean policies adopted by liberal governments. On the other side, fringe parties, they have a much more entrenched ideological division.
You mean fringe on both sides?
Yes. So these fringe groups, including the Anti-Communism Party Korea and Korean Peninsula Future Party, conservative, and the Unified Korea Party, which is liberal, and they prioritize North Korea in their campaign promises, which differs from the main two huge parties that are currently fighting for the top spot.
But each of them probably has a support figure in the single digits, right?
Yes, that's true.
No more than 1, 2, 3%, I'm
Hence
guessing?
the word fringe. Yeah.
Okay.
So if I'm gonna ask a question, I'm not gonna put you on the spot and ask who you voted for, but I'm curious. I mean, you guys both, Lina and Joon, are South Korean citizens. Oh wait, no.
Only
Joon
Joon
is.
is.
Yeah, right. So you could vote, right? For you, when you entered the voting booth, was North Korea part of your decision making?
Honestly, no. Because for lawmakers, I think, and also my generation, the biggest thing is socioeconomic issues. So those kind of overtake the diplomatic issues. And also I think that they take more heed in presidential elections more than the general elections, which is focusing on picking lawmakers.
Following on from that, when did you leave the military?
I left the military in June last year.
Okay, so it's within the last year. So when you were in the military and your cohort of fellow soldiers there in the battalion, did InterKorean issues come up in conversation?
I think InterKorean issues, they didn't come up in conversation per se, but of course, when we were holding drills and also in real-time situations, like there was a missile that fell just along the EC, and it was the first kind of North Korean attack per se that happened after the Yeonpyeong-do attack. That was quite real. So when we were all in the bunker, we were quite attentive towards whether we will actually have to defend our country with everything that we have, regardless of the diplomacy that is currently going on. Yeah.
But now that the election's actually coming up tomorrow, you think that for people of your age group, it's mainly socioeconomic issues that are front of mind rather than InterKorean or security issues. Is that right?
Well, you see that from the politicians today as well. So the politicians who are in their campaigns, they don't focus mostly on North Korea. They focus mostly on the negative politics. So taking one upper from the other political candidate. So for the public, they're not very much exposed to the North Korea-related issues as much as the issues that both the opposition and the ruling party are trying to take up on each other. So those issues are socioeconomic issues, cultural issues as well, that the president and also the ruling party have also to answer for. So yes, that is the verdict.
Think Jungmin wrote in our article that the ruling PPP, there are 10 main policies, only 8 of them were socioeconomic, and then North Korea was only mentioned like in a brief, one sentence.
And for your Korean friends as well, are they not so interested in or not talking so much about InterKorean issues and security issues?
Yeah, I just feel that there's so much more urgent issues that are ongoing right now that they may feel that North Korea is a little more distant at the moment. And so that topic is not on their mind right now.
Well, now we have another election-related issue or story. This one co-written by you, Joon, together with Jungmin. Seoul accuses North Korea of meddling in elections by belittling Yoon Suk-yeol. What's going on there?
So the Yoon administration and the Unification Ministry, they offered a more pressing view on the potential for North Korea to meddle in the upcoming elections. So just last Tuesday, a week before the general elections, the Unification Ministry, they accused North Korea of attempting to interfere in next week's general elections or this week's general elections by publishing articles belittling President Yoon Suk-yeol on DPRK state media, even though most South Koreans are not allowed or blocked from reading DPRK articles.
And it's worse than that. I mean, all of North Korea's South Korea facing, the radio station, the websites, they've all gone offline since the beginning of this year.
That's
so
true.
How would South Koreans even know whether North Korea is belittling President Yoon Suk-yeol unless the media or the President Yoon Suk-yeol government is telling them?
That's absolutely. So then experts, they kind of came together to sort of criticize the Yoon government's point of view, saying that South Koreans will not care about what the DPRK says about them and also their protests, and also saying that North Korea, reiterating the fact that North Korea is not a major factor in what decides voters' attitudes in this general election.
Is anyone in this, has the Bukpung specter been raised in this election season? Bukpung being a term used since the 1990s, alleging that South Korean conservatives tried to manipulate North Korea into doing something provocative to help the South Korean conservatives in the election. Is that? It feels like somebody might be looking at this issue and using that accusation that President Yoon and his party is trying to use the Bukpung.
So North Korea has cropped up during the current general election. It's usually been when candidates from the conservative side have made partisan attacks, accusing adversaries of being pro-DPRK or North Korea spies, rather than substantive policy stances regarding North Korea. So the Central Election Committee of the PPP, the ruling party, they issued an emergency notice a couple of weeks ago instructing candidates to hang campaign banners about punishing and driving away pro-North Korea forces from the National Assembly. But various PPP candidates quickly pushed back, citing concerns about losing centrist voters who do not show much care or show a lot of disdain for ideological quarrels. And the PPP leadership, they dropped the instruction within a few hours.
Wait, so the PPP leadership wants to see a more extreme messaging about North Korea, but many of the candidates would rather avoid such harsh rhetoric, is that right?
That's true, yeah. Okay. So the PPP leadership, as I just said, they dropped the instruction within a few hours of making the notice, tracking back on that decision, which kind of speaks volumes about what you've just mentioned, the pukpung, and also how conservative candidates and also liberal candidates can be subject to this sort of ideological divide.
Ifang, watching this as a non-Korean journalist, what do you make of it all? The lack, first of all, the lack of interest in inter-Korean issues, but also just the interesting choice in use of rhetoric.
Well, I've been living here for a couple of years now, and for me as well, even though I'm reading about North Korea every day, in daily life, I don't notice the presence of North Korea much. So it's, to me, no surprise that doesn't really move the needle for voters here. When it comes to the rhetoric, well, one thing that stood out to me is that, for example, a couple weeks before the election, there was a news report about the NIS, South Korea's National Intelligence Service, that allegedly spied on a progressive student group, right? And that's kind of part of what you're talking about, right? And that news came out. The student group obviously denied having done anything illegal.
Right.
But the fact that it came out a couple of weeks before the election was, to me, quite interesting in the sense that, there does seem to be some signaling going on. Like, there are pro-North Korean groups among us. But then again, as Joon already mentioned, it doesn't really seem to have a lot of impact on the election itself. So,
open question to all of you: do we see any signs that North Korea is interested in this election outcome, or cares either way, given its new stance that South Korea is no longer part of the Minjok anymore?
Not really. I mean, we've seen the North Korean state media reporting on anti-Yoon protests, but it's been doing so, months before the election as well. It's been doing so for almost more than a year now. So I don't see a lot of, at least, state media interest in the elections. Do you guys?
No, same with Ifang. Just reiterating what Ifang said. It's been there for more than a year, so it's not really been a major perspective on Pyongyang to. They will definitely internally. They will definitely have a care for the outcome of the general election, but of course outside they are not showing it.
Okay, well, all right. Let's move on to our second theme, and that is about calling people puppets. North Korea is, again, what I mentioned earlier, that it got this new stance towards South Korea, and it's throwing around different words and labels. And there's a South Korean YouTuber who tried to eat at a North Korean barbecue restaurant in China not long ago, and he got an unexpected question from a waitress there. Lina, tell us.
Yeah, so the South Korean YouTuber, he's a travel YouTuber who just went to the borderline between China and North Korea. And he went to, it's like a barbecue North Korean restaurant. And the waitress there asked him, 조선 쪽입니까? 계리입니까? Which means, are you Korean Chinese or are you a puppet?
Right.
Now, the word puppet is a derogatory term. So it often appears in a DPRK propaganda to slander South Korea as a subservient lackey to U.S. imperialists. So basically it's saying that South Korea is just following U.S. around. This YouTuber told me that he was taken aback because he has heard of the term before, but he has never been called of such term. No one would say that.
It's not a word often used directly to the second person, right? It's often used descriptively about the third person. And I should point out that South Korea used to, in the old days, use the word kwere about North Korea as well. So kwere-gun meant the North Korean army.
Right, that's what I heard.
Yeah.
But then the South Korean YouTuber, he has never heard of the term being actually used upon him before.
Yeah.
And I was asking other experts if any South Koreans has been called kwere directly, like person to person.
Right.
And they have never heard of such case before. But obviously, this could have happened. This could not be the first time, but this is happening. And it was recorded in video, and we could see that.
So I think what's interesting about it, I mean, in North Korean state media, the term puppet has been used a lot already, right? But what this example kind of shows is that perhaps overseas workers have now been given instructions on how to address any South Korean customers. So that's the kind of change that, you know, Lina is pointing out in her article.
Yeah, like, so what's interesting is how openly North Korean workers are using this term to South Koreans that they meet. Now, they say it's like this is a bigger move by North Korean regime because in the beginning of the year, now North Korea is purging anything related to unification to South Korea. And this could be seen as one of their tactics.
No, so what about this poor travel YouTuber? Did he get his barbecue meal or not?
Yes, he actually did. And what's actually so interesting is this was not mentioned in the video or in the story, but he said he was told by the waitress that he will not be served extra service, such as having the barbecue cooked. Now, after exchanging...
you mean cooked at the table by the waitress?
Yeah, which is like the custom in a Korean restaurant.
Right.
But after exchanging a few conversations, the waitress eventually cooked the barbecue for him.
Really?
Yeah.
So, correct me if I'm wrong here, is the policy, if you are a puppet, we don't serve you?
Yes, but,
or you get poor service?
I don't think they are...
We'll take your money, but you've got to cook yourself. Is that what's going on here?
Yeah. Well, I don't really know what kind of directives were actually passed down from the North Korean regime to these workers working abroad, but these experts have said that such directives telling the workers to not serve South Koreans could have been passed.
Right, because I feel like I've heard that, not in this story, but in a previous story, that there were some instances where South Koreans were turned away from North Korean restaurants, right? Is that?
That seemed to be a policy. Now, maybe in this case, the guy slipped through.
Right, like find out if he is a puppet, but still serve him.
So what I'm curious about, isn't it illegal for South Koreans to meet North Koreans abroad? Or shouldn't they at least inform the Ministry of Unification after having met a North Korean national?
Or maybe he should have got permission beforehand.
Right.
Yeah, so in
Under
this
the
case, I think the only reason why he was actually allowed to go into this restaurant is because it's a North Korean restaurant, but it is owned by a Korean Chinese. And there are North Korean workers inside these restaurants.
Yes.
And so...
But under the National Security Act of South Korea, simply talking to a North Korean in a third country can put him in trouble, put him in hot water, especially if he's got himself filmed and putting it up on the internet. I mean, there's evidence right there. I imagine it's possible that the NIS or the National Police might have called him up and said, hey, what's going on here?
Yeah, but the South Korean embassy in Beijing did warn South Korean nationals to avoid going to these North Korean restaurants rather than not telling them to not go in because of any like hostilities that could happen.
Right.
Linguistically, I like the word kwere. It's such a... Right, I mean, it's there are not many words in Korean where you have the kwe or re, right?
Yeah,
that's true.
right.
There's chire, landmine, that's got a re at the end, and
two very different meanings.
Right. But related, North Korean context.
Related, yes.
And when I think of kwere, for some reason, my mind always thinks of gwiri, which is the Korean word for oats. It's just, it's kind of like I don't know. Maybe you could make a poem out of them. I'll work on that. I'll see if I can come back with something next
Looking
month.
forward to reading it.
Looking forward to it.
So puppets also being used in North Korean broadcasts of some soccer matches.
Yeah. So last October, North Korean media.
Right, I'm sorry, not soccer, football.
Soccer. At the Asian Games held in October last year, North Korean state media used the word kwere instead of South Korea or any other terms. And actively.
Right, so it was Chosun 3, Quere 1.
Yeah, it was
the score on the screen. I love that.
Oh my God, you remember the number. Yes. And then it was interesting because at the AFC U20 Women's Soccer Asian Cup that was held this year in March, they used the term South Korea now. Hanguk.
Hanguk.
Yeah.
Not even Namjoseon.
Yeah, not even Namjoseon. It was Hanguk.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So they're not very consistent. At least.
Yeah. So some of the experts that I talked to, they said there are mixed signals going on internally at the moment, and maybe at the next meeting.
The next soccer match?
No, the next plenum.
Oh, you mean the Korean Workers' Party?
Yes.
Whether it's a plenum or a congress or a conference, I forget which.
Yeah.
Yes, at the next meeting,
Yeah.
there will be more regulations regarding what to call South Korea.
More clarity. Okay. Now, what about, so we've got Hanguk used in one TV broadcast and Quero used in another one. Are we seeing the full official name of the Republic of Korea, the Daehanminguk? Is that ever used even in quotation marks in, I don't know, North Korean state media, like the Nodong Shinmun, for example?
I believe that Kim Yo-jong used Daehanminguk before, but that was only used when she was trying to make fun of South Korea. Yeah.
Okay, so in an ironic way.
Yeah, in an ironic way.
With scare quotes.
Daehanminguk.
Okay. All right. Anything further to add about puppetry? Before we move on to our third theme?
Not really.
All right, then third theme is the United Nations Commission of Inquiry's report on the human rights situation at DPRK, which was, of course, released 10 year ago. So this year is the 10th anniversary of the release of that report. And I've been talking to people over the last year or two about that report on the podcast and asking, is it time for an update? And it seems that the Human Rights Council now thinks it might be. So, Ifang, tell us more.
Yeah, so this COI report is really a landmark report. So it was really the first big international report that talked about the extent of human rights violations in North Korea, and it's been referred to ever since. It was published in 2014. Now, NGOs have long been asking the UN to update this report, right? Because a lot has happened in 10 years.
Would that involve having another commission to do the research and then write the update?
Well, I'm not sure. I mean, there are probably various options in how you could publish an update on this, whether it would be an update or a completely new report. I'm not quite sure. But what happened earlier this month is that the UN Human Rights Council adopted a resolution calling to update this report. So this resolution has been passed for 22 years straight. So usually it's not that interesting. We cover it, but the contents will largely be the same. But this time it did mention that the Council requests the Office of the High Commissioner to prepare a comprehensive report updating the COI. So yeah, as you already mentioned, many people have been talking about providing a new COI.
Yeah.
The question is, of course, how much will that change? Because we already know that the human rights situation in North Korea is really bad. And of course, there have been updates. A lot happens in 10 years. But at the same time, I do wonder, I cover human rights a lot, if that really is a new UN report would really get people interested in North Korean human rights again.
Yeah.
Because we're having so many conferences.
Right.
There are so many reports by NGOs that are published every year. And those reports also include new information. And even that doesn't really seem to get the ball rolling on improving human rights, especially with so much other stuff going on in the world. So yeah, I do understand that this is an important step, but at the same time, I'm a bit skeptical whether it will change that much. And I think actually I was talking with my colleague Colin about this. I think at this point, what the cause needs, the human rights movement on addressing violations in DPRK is footage. It's video, it's film, it's photographs, right? That's what's lacking, and that's, sadly, often what will go viral and what will make a general public interested in this cause.
In the world of social media, right. But now, there are also, we have something a little bit unprecedented. Joon, perhaps you can tell us about the coalition of more than 20 different partners that came together and gave testimony at the Human Rights Council pushing for stronger action.
No, so what's new here is that, there has been a big coalition of human rights NGOs that really seems to be pushing forward this COI renewal. And that's led by at least, I think, Human Rights Watch and the Canada-based Handvoice, two of the main parties in that seem to really try to get this through, and successfully. So that's interesting.
Yeah, I hope to have both Handvoice and Human Rights Watch on the show later on this spring. Now, there have been going back to what you said earlier, Ifang, about the need for footage to go viral. There have been different groups before and still active now that send in video cameras to sort of on-the-ground citizen journalists to get little snatches of footage. I can think of Caleb Mission Church on YouTube that periodically releases new footage, and there's the Mr. Ishimaru-san in Japan that sends in cameras. So is there nothing more coming out since the North Korean border has opened post-COVID?
Well, I think last year there was an interesting video. I think the BBC published it, BBC Korean service, of the sentencing of 2 Korean citizens for consuming foreign media. And that was one of the first actual videos in years that really display these things that we're talking about in reports. And it's really important to have that, because otherwise, if all reports are only based on testimonies, it's also easier for North Korea to refute them, right? Yeah. So the combination of testimonies and actual visual evidence, be it satellite imagery, photos, or video, is really essential to make a stronger case.
Now, there are groups and individuals out there in the world who believe that North Korea is unfairly the target of criticisms of human rights, and that believe that defectors are not to be trusted, that they invent stories or exaggerate stories. Are such groups and individuals speaking out now in defense of North Korea, saying that we don't need another COI report? Actually, things are doing okay in North Korea?
I haven't seen those kind of remarks yet, but I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, I know that North Korea already, of course, condemned the resolution at the Human Rights Council. They didn't specifically mention the COI renewal, but I mean, North Korea always condemns the adoption and calls it a hostile plot by the West. So nothing new there. Yeah.
Does North Korea actively attend and participate in these Human Rights Council meetings in Geneva?
When it's about themselves, usually not.
Okay, so they tend not to go there.
No.
All right. Well, it'll be interesting to see how that develops. Okay, and our final theme today, and it's an interesting one that we haven't talked about before on this podcast, about tall buildings in Seoul and guns on the top of them, anti-aircraft guns, to possibly shoot down North Korean drones or aircraft. But this is nothing new. Who'd like to start off?
Well, I can briefly introduce the topic and I get you guys both in to comment on it, because so what the way this story started is, like, we got a tip from a source who wanted to remain anonymous that there are these army guys going up my apartment elevator all the time, and I wonder what's going on.
So
that's basically how it started.
Yeah.
And that got my curiosity going, and I started investigating this.
And is that Park 1 building?
No, it was a different building.
There was an office in there. I thought that was all commercial.
No. That's usually an office building. Anyway, from that moment on, I got curious, and I started Googling. And then in Korean, there are a couple of blog posts about these guns and army units that are allegedly present on residential and civilian buildings. But that, of course, a blog post is not enough for us to write a story on.
No, but it is something that's certainly been going on for decades. I mean, some of the tallest hotels in downtown Seoul near City Hall used to have gun emplacements on them, I was told by people back in the day. Now, they may have moved elsewhere now. And I was told by somebody a few years ago that they saw military folks going up and down the elevator in a very, very tall, newly built hotel.
So it's been an open secret. That's basically the case, right? But now, last year, or was it 2022 maybe even, South Korean military actually released footage of these units. They're called building GOPs. So GOP stands for General Outpost.
That's
correct. I'm looking at you, Joon.
Yeah.
And these
That's
are...
what I was going to guess, but okay, let's go with that.
And these are small units of maybe 10 soldiers. who are able to operate anti-aircraft guns and also surface-to-air guided missiles on top of the roofs of civilian buildings. So these are guns that can shoot drones and airplanes out of the sky, and presumably they're mainly there to prevent North Korean air infiltration of the South Korean skies. And what's interesting here is that they're placed on civilian buildings, and that a lot of people in South Korea don't know about them. So I was able to...
Is the implication here that the civilian buildings could themselves be targets in a North Korean attack?
Exactly. So I talked with international law experts, and they said the moment that there is a military object placed on top of a civilian building, that makes it a legitimate target in the case of a war. So it completely changes the legal status of that building. So what you could have, that if a war breaks out and your apartment happens to have a big gun on the roof, well, North Korea could target you. Of course, I also talked with military experts who said, well, North Korea will target you anyway. Well, if they're trying to attack Seoul, they might just send out a barrage of bombs rather than precision strikes. But even still, it's interesting that people don't know about it. So, Lina, you actually went out to one of the buildings that we identified has these guns on it. It's the Park 1 building. It's one of the high buildings in Yeouido.
It's got very distinctive vertical red pillars.
That's correct.
Were you able to get up on the roof, Lina?
No, I wasn't.
Was the door locked?
I didn't even try to go up there, actually, because there were security guards all around the building. But it didn't seem like there were security guards for the GOP. But what was interesting in the building was that it was so peaceful. Everyone was so busy just working. And I asked like several people if they know. Only 3 people were able to answer. One was like an older man, maybe in his 50s. He said he doesn't know. 2 other younger women and men, they also said they don't know.
Wow.
They have never seen any military personnel going up or around, or have not been notified of these things.
Joon, have these guns that look kind of big and heavy, are they the sort of thing you could take up in an elevator, or would you have to bring them up by helicopter?
No. They would have to be transferred by helicopter. So they are, they're not suitable for the lift travel.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you see a helicopter landing on a tall building, get suspicious maybe.
That could be.
But were you aware of these
I
GOP?
was, yes.
Oh, wow.
So
do you think all soldiers would be aware? Or
I don't think all soldiers would be aware.
Okay.
But I had a couple acquaintances that did.
They were in anti-aircraft units.
They were in anti-aircraft units, but they weren't in building GOPs.
Okay.
But they knew about building GOPs. Yeah.
Now, from the images that we see, the satellite images that you can see in Naver and in Kakao maps, normally if you try to look, for example, at Yongsan Garrison or any other sensitive site, these are blurred out and all you see is forest. Are you able to see these gun emplacements on the top of buildings?
Yeah, we were actually able to
spot so they're not blurred or removed or pixelated. That's interesting. Okay.
Well, and obviously we only identified one building because it is sensitive information.
Yeah.
We were able to spot a couple of more, but we chose in our story to only identify one of them because the South Korean military actually quite obviously featured this building in a YouTube video.
Promotional video,
So in that case, we felt a bit more comfortable with actually showing this, and already a couple of South Korean media reported on the presence of these anti-aircraft units on this particular building. That's the Park 1 building. But presumably they're also on high-rise buildings near, for example, the presidential office and that kind of stuff. Yeah.
These guns, are they believed to be permanently stationed, or are they kind of rotated out every year or half year or something?
It seems that they move around. They seem to move around, and whenever a taller building is being built, they will be placed on those buildings. And why this is relevant, of course, is because we had, was it last year, Joon? There was a North Korean drone that actually managed to infiltrate South Korean skies.
That was
and
in
just,
2022.
Roam around Seoul for a bit, goofing around a couple of buildings, and there was this attempt to shoot out of the sky, which failed. So one expert told me that, these units, anti-aircraft, but also anti-drone units, will only become more important in the future.
But also, I'm not a military guy by any means here, but it seems to me that when you shoot a bullet or a shell or anything at a drone or an aircraft, if that doesn't get lodged in the aircraft, it's going to come down somewhere, right? It's a bit like periodically you'll read stories about people who shoot guns in the air at weddings and celebrations, and sometimes the bullet comes down maybe a couple of kilometers away and kills somebody. That could be a bit risky, right? Shooting in a dense urban environment.
Yes.
Anti-aircraft shells, they're pretty hefty shells, right?
But in a state of conflict, those rules and also those implications do not really matter to the soldiers and also the personnel.
Yes.
Yeah.
But if there's one drone, zipping around Seoul, does
that's why I think military experts, they emphasize the need for precision strike training. So precision strike being that when it's picked up on the radar or when it's picked up on your systems, then swiftly there will be a precision strike. But of course, that's up to the army and also the broader military to decide whether that is necessary. Yeah.
All right. Wow. Very interesting. So if you see some tall buildings, look up. You never know what you might be missing. Okay, what stories or themes are you keeping an eye on this week and this month? Of course, there's the election tomorrow, which by the time this podcast comes out, it'll be today. But what other things are you keeping an eye on?
Yeah, I'll go first. So Ifang and I are working on a fisheries feature. So there's a fishing line in Kosong. So we're looking to get out on a fishing adventure and seeing, going up to the outskirts of the South Korean coast.
Excellent. And maybe eat some freshly caught squid while you're at it, raw. Ifang looks excited. All right. Any final thoughts to leave us with, Ifang?
Well, I'm curious to see if North Korea will have any response to the ROK spy satellite launch. That was yesterday, so Monday the 8th, that would have been. Yeah, South Korea launched a second spy satellite. There seems to be a little bit of a spy satellite competition going on between the North and the South.
North Korea did say that this year it plans to get some more up, didn't it?
Yes, definitely. So at the same time, North Korean provocations, as some call them, have been a bit on the low. There has been a new missile that's been launched, but I feel like there are less missile launches than last year, because of course, as reporters, whenever a missile goes up in the air, we all get YONAP alerts, and we're supposed to run to our desks and see what's going on. And I felt like that hasn't really happened that much this year. So I'm on the lookout for any kind of North Korean missile launches and that kind of stuff, and see if they actually will ramp it up.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you for coming on the show, Ifang, and thank you for our interns, Joon and Lina. Thanks for coming on, and enjoy the rest of the month.
Thank you.
Thank you for having
Jacco.
us.
See you again. Join the Korea Pro community and unlock a world of exclusive insights on Korea. As a Korea Pro member, you gain access to articles, expert analyses, and comprehensive reports that keep you ahead on Korean affairs. Plus, enjoy priority invites to our unique events in Seoul that connect you with key leaders and influencers. Elevate your understanding of Korea. Join us today at koreapro.org/podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of our podcast episode for today. Our thanks go to Brian Betts and Alana Hill for facilitating this episode, and to our post-recording producer genius, Gabby Magnuson, who cuts out all the extraneous noises, awkward silences, bodily functions, and fixes the audio levels. Thank you, and listen again next time.